All right, hey, what's up everybody? GratuiTous here from GratuiTous.com. In this tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to mix your kicks and 808s. So the first thing to talk about is sound selection is very important when it comes to your kick drums and your 808s, which I'll break down in this tutorial, okay? Before we get into this tutorial, definitely check out my free beat making book I have written for you guys for FL Studio producers. Just go to itsgratuitous.com/5 keys and I will send you my free beat making book, okay? All right, so like I said, it's all about sound selection when it comes to our kicks and our 808s. So you can see if I open up this one, this is an S kick, so it's a short-tailed kick, all right? This is in the Urban Heat drum kit from the last tutorial. This is in the drum bundle trio. I talk to you guys about this drum kit all the time. So inside of Urban Heat, we have the short kicks, and I'll let you listen to one. Okay, and then the next sound is an 808. Okay, so again, we have the short kicks, we have the 808s, and I also selected a kick drum that has a little bit of a longer tail. And the reason I did that is so that when we are listening to these sounds, you're going to hear that there's frequency clashing, okay? So when it comes to our 808s and our kick drums, what's happening is it's in our low frequencies, right? And our low frequencies, what's happening is that they are slow moving, right? So we have our kick drum, we have our 808, right? And then we have another kick drum, which is kind of has like that same low end as the 808, but it's quicker. So what's happening is if we are layering up our sounds, which is what we often do, listen to this, it sounds nice and clean, and this improves on the 808. Okay, you hear how that's hitting harder, right? And that's because it's a short-tailed kick, it hits really hard, and it's not really conflicting with that 808. Now, I'm going to talk to you about sidechain compression in this tutorial and everything too. But now I want you to listen closely, and I want you to also look at the meter. Do you hear that wobble? Right? Again, make sure you're listening on headphones or on speakers. Listen to the wobble. Now, this is what you have to be listening for when you're mixing your music. If your bass is wobbling like this, that means that heavy phase cancellation is happening. And that's because we have an 808 with a long bass tail. And then because of poor sound selection, this kick drum is going to make the mixing a lot harder, which is where you are going to have to be doing sidechain compression to help compensate for that. There's other ways too, which I'll quickly talk about in this tutorial. We're not going to get too much into the EQ and compression, just more about how you can kind of remedy these ways really quick, okay? So again, check out this short-tailed kick with the 808, right? It hits hard. Remove the short tail. Again, let's listen to that wobble. Without it. Okay, so let's just focus on this one right here. I'll just say this one is the 808, and I'll say this one is the long, a long drum, okay? I'm gonna right click to highlight both of those. We'll come here. The keyboard shortcut is Control, Shift, and L. It brought them right into there. And so what we're gonna do is we're going to route the long drum into the 808, and you do that just by right clicking, and you can go sidechain to this track. And so what that's doing, it's allowing the 808 to see the long drum as a trigger. As soon as you increase this a little bit, now you're sending the volume. We don't want to send the volume. And so just for clarity for you to know, if you know, when you right click here and you have these options, these are just if you want volume, okay? Or if you just don't want volume is what it's saying. If you go route to this track and if you turn it down, this is the exact same thing as sidechain to this track, okay? All right, so the long drum is going to the 808, and we're able to see the long drum as a trigger on the 808. Now you can open up the Fruity limiter, all right? And so what this is going to do is now when you go to the compression tab, you can see sidechain, and now you can see that the long drum can be used as a trigger. In order to activate it, you got to turn down the threshold so that it's over the volume. I'm just going to hit the 808 a couple times so that I can see how loud it is, and then the threshold has to be below that volume. Okay, so you can see here's the 808. So I'm going to bring this threshold down so that it's actually triggering. Okay, if the volume is not going over the threshold, then this sidechain compression won't work. We also need a ratio. Okay, so now what happens is when we play the long drum, what's going to happen is you will see it duck. Okay, so I will disable so we can see it again, and as soon as I hit play, because they're both on. Okay, so let's just go lower and make it more aggressive. All right, so this is too much, and you can see what's happening is it's bringing down that 808, and then we're hearing it right at the very end. Okay, so that's not good. So let's bring back the release a bit. Okay, let's bring back the ratio. Still not good. All right, so what's happening is just the threshold is too low. All right, so what you want to try and do is you want to try and fine tune it so that it sounds natural. The whole goal here is that you want to be able to hear the kick drum and then hear the 808 in a natural way. And what we're doing is the long drum is reducing the volume of the 808, and it's all about just trying to time it right. Okay, so what's happening is if my release is too fast, what's happening is we're hearing distortion. So listen to that. Okay, so we got to have a bit of a longer release here so we don't hear that distortion, because we want it to be, I want the same sound, I just want it to sound clean. Another cool trick I will show you guys here is, so what's happening is many times when you are using a single band compressor, what is happening is it is reducing the volume of the whole sound. All right, so here's the 808. So what's happening essentially is this, okay? So if the sound plays, what's happening is the whole volume of the sound is going down. So if we play the 808, it would be like this, right? And so what we can do is instead of it being just like that, what we can do is we can just bring it so it just ducks the low end. Or if I go to a low shelf, you can see that it would just duck like the low end like this. In other words, we can kind of keep some highs. And so when we're talking about sidechain compression, like we can be using it for different instruments, right? Sometimes if different instruments are fighting with each other, sometimes we can drop certain things, or even if the bass line did have heavy distortion going on. So let's just try that. So watch on the 808, we will add on some distortion, the Fruity Blood Overdrive. And again, you can right click and you can change the theme. So watch, you're going to see when I press it, you're going to see that the high end is going to increase, all right? Okay, so let's be really aggressive. We'll pull back. And this is just so that you can see the high end. All right, so without it. So again, look in here. Okay, so sometimes what's happening is, again, it's the low end that's fighting with the kick drum. It's not so much over here, right? It's not over here. It's over here that's fighting with it. And so I just want to show you quickly a cool little trick I learned over the years. And we can pull back a little bit because I don't like my 808s that distorted. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to open up just the Fruity Parametric EQ2. Now on the long drum, what you want to do is there is the plugin called the Fruity Peak Controller. All right. And so when you open this up, the first thing you want to do is make sure you disable the mute. And so that way we can actually still hear the sound, because if it's muted, you can't hear it, but you can see it, but we want to hear it. And so now what happens is this is a really powerful plugin. All right. It allows you to have an internal controller. And if you don't know about controllers, like an automation clip is a controller, but it's internal. And so watch, if we right click here and we go link to controller, because I told you that the Fruity Peak controller, right? It's an internal controller. So we go to internal controller and you can see that from the long drum. Let's recap. On the long drum, we have the Fruity Peak controller. On the 808, I right clicked and went link to controller and I got this window. Now we're able to see the internal controller, which is the Fruity Peak controller, off of the long drum on the 808. And so what I want to do is you can go peak and LFO or just peak or just LFO. And so what this is let's just bring this down a little bit. You can see that the peak controller has the LFO section. It also has the peak section. So if you want to use both, you can have it on peak and LFO. If you just want to use the peak, you can have it on peak. If you just want to use the LFO, you can use that, or you can leave it on both and then just use the peak. But in this case, I want to use the peak for volume control, right? So how loud something is. And a cool little trick is you can also invert it, but I think I'm just going to leave it this way. All right, so as soon as I press Q, again, I always use Q on my typing keyboard to test the sound. I always find it's nice and quick. You're going to see that this volume is going to go down, but you can see that it's going opposite, okay? So I'm just going to turn it on the other way. We can bring up the bass. And so this is one way to do it, but this is the exact same way as sidechain compression. So let's say they're playing together. So, and then you can just kind of fine tune the decay. But what I wanted to show you is I don't want link to controller on that. I want link to controller on this. Okay. So again, on the 808, we have an EQ, even though it says the fab filter. Let's just close this and we'll just reopen up a new EQ. And so what we want, or like, this is a really cool trick. All right. So instead of turning down the volume of the whole sound, which is, this is what sidechain compression is doing. It's bringing down the volume of the whole sound. And again, if you have heavy distortion going on in your 808, again, you do have that high end, which many times you want to take advantage of. And it's just the low end that's clashing with your other drum. So again, because we have the Fruity Peak controller, we can come up to our EQ. Again, this is on the 808. You can see it right there. And you can come on, you can right click here and go link to controller. All right. So this is why understanding about automation and controllers and stuff is so powerful, because it allows you to do really powerful things inside of FL Studio. So I have routed the controller from the long drum onto the 808's band here. And again, if I right click here, you can see that now it's linked to a controller. And so if I just press Q again, okay, so whenever I play this long drum, you can see it's doing this. And so on the Fruity Peak controller, what you want to do is you just kind of want to fine tune it. So the bass is where it's actually going to start. So if I go reset, that's all the way at the bottom. So I want this to be at 50%, I think. So let's just, one sec, I'll just close that. I'm just going to right click and go type in value. So let's go 0.5. And that's good, because that's where it is. I'm not trying to do EQ here really. I'm just trying to do like sidechain compression only in a certain band, in a certain area, okay? So if I were to press Q again, you can see it's ducking. So that's pretty heavy. So I don't want it to be like that. So maybe something like this. And the decay is how fast it's going to come back, all right? So you can see it's really slow. So you're never going to hear the 808 now. You just want it to be nice and quick. Your tension is just kind of like your curve. How aggressive do you want it to be? And you can kind of fine tune it like that. You can even see that the actual curve is changing. So, and again, it's just kind of like it's by ear thing. So you can see if it's too long, you're not going to hear that low end anymore. So actually we go faster. We're still hearing that low end. And the nice thing is with doing it like this, you can fine tune how deep you want it to go into this 808. Right? So essentially sidechain compression, like let's say if we're using like the Fruity limiter, is doing like this, all right? So it's doing like the whole frequency spectrum, but you may not be hearing it very well. And so if you can just bring it back a little bit around here, let's say, you can hit those low frequencies to clear it up so that both your kick, both your 808 can stand out. You can still hear those high frequencies. I'm not saying that I fine-tuned this properly, but I'm just showing you that this is how you do it if you want to get your kick and your 808 to sound nice and clean. This also goes for like your bass line or anything like that. One cool little trick I'll show you guys is, this is the reason why I do like using FabFilter plugins. Here is like the Pro MB. So I'll just show you how fast it is here. So essentially it's like, again, you can have a single band just like this, or you can just have it wherever you want it like this. Now, in this case, you don't have to be opening up the Fruity Peak controller with Pro MB. A really cool thing is it also has like the range knob, so you can be really aggressive on your ratio and then just pull back how much. This is kind of like a mix knob essentially. But so you can see I have my band right here. In Pro MB, you just click the expert, you go to external. And again, because I've routed the long drum to the 808 with the sidechain, just like we did at the very beginning of this tutorial, now the 808 where the Pro MB is on, you can see that you come up here to the VST wrapper settings, all right? You're gonna go to processing and you're gonna see stereo sidechain, all right? Here is the long drum. And so now, same thing, if I play the long drum, you can see that we can fine tune with our threshold. But what makes this so powerful is that if you really wanted to, you could even do it like in here too. You can even do opposite. Sorry, I have to be on expand. So you can see what's going to happen is it's emphasizing the click, and then the low end is pulling down the 808. So again, it just, different tools allow you to do different things, but when you use dynamic EQ or dynamic compression, it's just going to help things be a little bit more lively in your music and still have the bounce and still retain the normal kind of characteristics of a lot of these sounds. So if you guys want to keep learning FL Studio with me, hop over to my website, itsgratuitous.com. I have tons of courses, beginners courses and books, as well as more advanced stuff. Just visit itsgratuitous.com/courses if you're interested in that. And you guys can also check out my free beat making book I have for you guys. It's called 5 Keys to a Successful Beat. Just go to itsgratuitous.com/5 keys, enter in your name and email. You guys can download it. There's tons and tons and tons of valuable tips in there. Again, feel free to always reach out. You guys can check out the podcast. Subscribe here on YouTube if you would like to get new videos from me. And I'll talk to you guys in another tutorial.